R.I.P. George Washington, you would have loved NFTs. Welcome to Wow If True, the podcast of your wildest memes.
We're your one-stop internet culture shop, here to dissect what's going viral, why we care, and how this might affect our real human lives. I'm your guy who is not currently at the Korean spa despite my friends being there, Isabel.
Oh no, why aren't you at the Korean spa?
Because I'm recording a podcast!
Oh, good. We should have rescheduled. I'm Amanda. Anyone could be famous on the internet, so why not us?
Unrelated to the Korean spa, shout out that we have merch. We will be so annoying about this later, but for now just know that you can go to wowiftrue.com/merch and check out our merch. It is cool, it is good, I designed it, and buying it keeps the lights on, and also you get a sweatshirt and or mug and or t-shirt or tote bag. A lot of things that can like...
And or sticker.
Or sticker. Right, we got stickers now. Anyway, go check that out.
Yeah, I'm currently wearing my Just Kill Them, This Is Not Legal Advice shirt because I slept in it last night and I just rolled out of bed and was like, oh fuck, we got a podcast. And it's very comfy. I mean, it's so comfy that you will be lulled into a state of dreamlike sleep in which you forget you're supposed to make a podcast.
These shirts guarantee to make you forget that you need to record your podcast.
Yeah, it is very soft.
Also, we are 8 episodes away from episode 69, and we are counting that down. Just putting that out there.
Hell yeah. We are very mature.
Anyway, okay, let's actually talk about stuff and things instead of other stuff and things. So, last week we talked about how everything is ephemeral on the internet, and everything you love will eventually disappear into the ether. By this I mean we were talking about stripper web going down, and who is the anonymous owner who was like, goodbye. But wait, there's light in the darkness. I don't know why I scripted this whole thing. I could have just said it off the cuff, and now I feel like I'm, like, narrating a monologue or something. Anyway.
I think it's kind of funny.
Okay, good. Anyway, by this I mean, Allison, one of our editors, heard us talk about how everything will disappear into the ether and went, actually, no, because this is my job, because she's a university archivist. So here's Allison Mills, here to talk about digital preservation with us. Hi, Allison. Introduce yourself. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Allison Mills. I'm one of the editors for Wow If True, and I'm also a professional archivist.
Hell yeah.
Why does that qualify you to tell us about digital preservation? And also, what is digital preservation anyway?
Well, digital preservation is a thing you can do to make sure that your digital records remain accessible in the future. It is a way to take control of your content to make sure that you don't lose things that are important to you. Although there are some limitations to how you can do that. And being an archivist qualifies me to talk about digital preservation because that is part of my job. Archivists save records, and in the year 2023, a lot of records are digital.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how similar is your job to doing what happens in the Magnus archives?
0. That is like literally the opposite of my job. It kills me that part of the lore of the Magnus archives is reading documents out loud and recording them on cassette tapes. That's not what we do. That's the opposite of what we do.
Also, while we're introducing you, am I allowed to say that you and Isabel are the co-authors of Beep?
I guess you can, because you just did.
I have fun. I was on a hike yesterday with someone I had never met before. Also my friend,
that sounds
but
so
you know.
Sketchy. You just went on a hike with a stranger? That's where people die.
Yeah, Amanda, that's how you get murdered.
No, I was on a hike with my friend and then also my friend's other friend who I hadn't met previously. And while we were just like walking along in the Wissahickon, as one does, Wissahickon in the Wissahickon, if you will, we ended up on the topic of I have a podcast. I was explaining it, and somehow I was like, you know how every book was fanfic to start out? That's what we talk about. And it was a weird pitch. Another thing that I think is funny that happened on the hike that's podcast worthy is that my mom texted me and said, you butt dialed me. And I was like, oh no. And then my mom was like, yeah, I heard you talking about Judaism. And then I hung up. Which, you know, Could have been worse.
I like that the way that you said this implies that these things are related. It's like, shit, my daughter's talking about Judaism. I need to leave.
Yeah. Damn, cannot believe that my Jewish child is talking about Judaism. Which, you know, I never felt like a better Jew in my life. Anyway, archives?
Allison, if you wanted to archive what Amanda has just said here for future generations, how would you do it? I'm sorry, I told you I would just be asking you dumb questions.
Yeah, I mean, I would save the audio as an uncompressed WAV file, and with at least 24 kilohertz, I think. I would have to double check that because I'm just going off the top of my head right now. And I would also make a transcript of it, which I would save as a PDF-A so that the audio would be accessible for people who can't hear.
Damn, can't believe that in like 200 years, people are going to be reflecting on early 21st century American Judaism, and they're just going to hear about me on a hike talking about Judaism and then butt dialing my mom.
You know, that's probably important context for people in future generations. It implies that, like, you know, the construct of a mother existed and the concept of butt dialing existed, both of which are equally important.
Okay, Allison, here's an archive question. So, you know, like this hypothetical thing that comes up in conversation sometimes where it's like, imagine if the earth is shattered and all that exists is like a satellite with media in it, and then they find like Brian David Gilbert's darts video or whatever. If you had to choose 3 pieces of media to send to the aliens to explain humanity, what would they be?
That is a very difficult question. I mean,
Let's narrow it down to 1. I don't know why I said 3. That's too much.
I mean,
Amanda, are you coming up with this off the top of your head?
Oh yeah, I just thought about that. I was just like, I wonder what Allison would say about sending archives to the aliens.
No, this is because it's very funny because I wrote that down as another question that we should ask, and I just enjoy our sync between both wearing Wow True merch and having the same question. And anyway, Allison, you should have been ready. You had time to prepare for this.
I mean, not for this specifically. I think if I had to choose one thing to send to aliens, it would probably be music. And I think that I would choose, I mean, there's so much music in the world that it would be really hard to pick a specific song. It would be something without lyrics, though, because I think that that would be more universally accessible than, like, if I sent, I don't know, Butter by BTS into the universe.
But they would enjoy Butter more. Let's be real. They would enjoy Butter more.
You don't have to understand Korean or English to enjoy Butter, but still, I think that an instrumental piece would be probably what I would send into the world.
I think it'd be kind of fun to send, like, if you could send 2 pieces, it would be fun to send, like, something that's, like, a very long song with a lot of words, and then the alphabet song, and then see if they can, like, kind of, like, Rosetta Stone their way into figuring this out.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Listen, if anyone's out there doing, like, the we're sending things to aliens research, call me. I have good ideas.
Well, to get us a bit back on track, can you describe to us a day in the life of being a university archivist?
I can, but it doesn't have a lot to do with digital preservation because a lot of my digital preservation stuff, one, is done by a colleague who specializes in digital archives, and 2, the stuff that I do is mostly like set up in the background to run through APIs and automated web crawlers.
Okay, actually, genuine question. Like, what... Like, taking away the question of aliens for now, we're tabling the aliens. Like, what are the considerations that go into deciding what should be archived? Like, what digital content should be archived and what shouldn't? Is it just kind of a, oh shit, we need to save everything? But, I mean, but there's so much of everything that presumably, like, what people who do this stuff think about is what is important to keep. That was very disjointed, but do you kind of see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the thing that people who aren't archivists don't realize is that, like, I mean, archives have been around since really the 1700s. I mean, there's been other iterations of we need to save stuff for longer than that, but the modern iteration of archives as this thing that like saves content, organizes it by creator, not subject, like you would find in a library, and tries to like preserve the original context of that material's creation. Because it's been around for like 300 years, a lot of what archivists do now is go, shit, we can't save everything. What is like vital to save and what can we get rid of? Which to non-archivists I think sounds scary, but also like we have so much stuff. When we're talking about digital preservation versus the preservation of physical media, like books, photographs, letters, things like that, digital items are a lot more fragile than traditional media, and they require a lot of special care to keep them usable over time. You need special software and machines to access digitally encoded information, and the dependence on technology means that those things are at a greater risk of being lost than like a letter that somebody wrote 100 years ago. And with digital formats too, like small changes to codes or file formats could mean that files become unreadable really easily. And technology, like as you both know as people who do like a technology podcast, changes really rapidly. And that means that information that's stored on old media or as old file formats quickly become inaccessible. So like, who has a floppy disk reader anymore? Oh, I mean, I do, but that's because I'm an archivist.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I could probably access one if I needed to, but it would be like a quest.
Yeah.
And I feel like actually my first point of action if I was looking for a floppy disk would probably be to check with the university that is located nearest to me, which I will not name, even though it is probably pretty easy to figure out.
So I was looking for a CD player a while ago, and even that was weirdly hard to find, which I was not expecting.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been that long since CDs were a thing, or at least it doesn't feel that long. And I still have information from when I was like in my, like when I was a teenager that's on CDs.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it was like a whole ordeal to find the CD player kind of surprised me. But also I was like, yeah, I haven't actually used a CD in years.
Yeah, I don't have a CD player. I have no way to play a CD in my apartment.
Same. I do at work, but again, that's only because I'm an archivist. But yeah, there are lots of reasons why digital content could become inaccessible. So like I said, the file format could become outdated. The carrier, so that would be like your floppy disk, your CD-ROM, could be outdated. There could be certain software that's required to open material that is not available anymore. The type of computer that you need to run that software might not be available even if you have the software saved somewhere. The file or the drive could just become corrupt, or you could accidentally delete something vitally important to being able to open the file.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I feel like I would guess that physical objects are more prone to something going horribly wrong. But now that you explain it, it's like the way that we preserve an old photograph really is never going to change. But the way that we preserve digital files is constantly changing. Damn, I'm already learning things. What a great educational podcast we have.
Wait. Genuine question, is the practice usually to just save things in whatever format you get them, or to update them to newer formats that are currently readable? Like, basically, do you keep the original, or do you start making copies that are more easily accessible, or does it just depend on like what the thing is?
It depends. So the process of migrating a file to like a newer, more accessible, or more permanent in a like ephemeral definition of permanent kind of file is called normalization. And we do that a lot with things that otherwise like we will have no way of reading them in the future. So if you had like a Word Perfect document, you might migrate that to either a Word doc or to a PDF. And there are considerations that go into what you are migrating or saving something as. When we're talking about file formats, there are certain file formats that are considered to be preservation formats. And generally those are formats that are open source and have lots of available documentation about the format and published specifications, and or things that are widely adopted. So like word.docx isn't open source, but it's widely adopted. You want something that's lossless, so something that's an uncompressed file, and you want something that supports embedded metadata, so that like when you are looking at the file in the future, you have data about your data, which is what metadata is, that tells you what you're looking at and what has been done to it.
So I know what metadata is. Metadata. Is there such a thing? So let's say that you are with archivists and you're talking about like the way that you arrange metadata and like what the best practices are for like updating metadata. What do you call that discussion? Metadata.
I mean, I guess I would call that discussion work, but
Damn.
that works also.
I'm also just not, this is a little off topic, but when we were talking about CDs, it just really took me back to, I feel like me and Isabel's age group is probably like the last people that will remember like making mix CDs.
Mm-hmm.
But then that also reminded me of a really nerdy thing about myself that I wanted to share, because what is having a podcast if not embarrassing yourself publicly? And when I would share music with my friends in high school, I had so much I wanted to share that it would not fit on a CD, and it was not cost effective to keep buying CDs and like doing all that stuff. So what I did instead was I would give my friends flash drives of music.
That is such a weird little bridge in the technological advancement of sharing music. Also, you fucking nerd.
Yeah, the other, here, I'm just gonna further embarrass myself on the internet because this is the content people come for. One of the many people that I would give flash drives of music to was this guy that I had a crush on. And I wouldn't say he was a family friend, but he was, like, someone that, like, my family knew his family. So, like, that's an element here. And I don't know how this came up, but a few years ago, like, this is like 10 years after the fact, I was just like casually talking with my mom, and I was like, oh yeah, you know what's funny? I had a crush on Redacted in high school. And she was like, oh yeah, I know. And oof. It was the worst moment of my life.
That's rough.
But you know, hey, I shaped that guy's music taste, and that's an accomplishment.
Did you improve him as a man for, like, you know, future... I was gonna say future use, but that's a weird thing to say about a human being. But, like, you know, by fixing his music taste, you change the trajectory of his life?
I don't know, probably not, but he's a dentist now.
You made him a dentist!
Well, no, I mean, his dad was also a dentist, so I feel like it was kind of, you know,
the concept...
there were some other factors going on.
The concept of a dentist as, like, a hereditary, like, profession is fascinating to me, actually. Of all fucking things.
Yeah, oh no, and they have a practice together, which I know because my brother recently went to the doctor, and then when they have the directory of, like, what room everyone's in, he sent me a picture and was like, look who's a dentist now, and I was like, knew it.
What sort of music do you think he plays in there? Do you think it's your mixtape?
Oh, Arctic Monkeys and the Strokes. He's just, like, filling people's cavities and being like, let me tell you about Arctic Monkeys. Anyway, those are two stories of my mom perceiving me on this episode. Thanks, Mom.
Brandon, if this episode is preserved for future generations, so many other people could perceive you in the future.
It's fine. I gave flash drives to my friends. You know... Okay, here's another thing, is... So, I think I'm really easy to make fun of, and I did recently mention in the WoW True Discord that I was president of Model UN in high school, and then... someone was like, oh, I'm gonna make fun of you for that. And I'm like, I'm proud of that. Model UN is lit. Model UN is, like, what gets people into tabletop RPGs, which are also very cool.
That's really not the flex you think it is, and I'm saying that as someone who is in like 4 different tabletop campaigns right now. I'm just saying that is a lateral move.
All right. Well, now that we've digitally preserved how much of a nerd I was in high school, Allison.
Allison, if a listener wanted to save this episode for future generations, what should they do?
I mean, I think we've gone over this, right? Save it as a wave, make sure it's uncompressed. Probably you should transcribe it, although if you're saving it for your own future use, you will know whether or not you need that transcription. And then also, as like an individual doing your own personal digital archiving, there are some like best practices that you can keep in mind for thinking about storage. So there is a like easy access method of digital preservation that's called locks. Lots of copies keep stuff safe. As long as your files are stored in preservation formats, if you keep multiple copies of things in different locations, then, you know, if disaster strikes one location, then hopefully your other copy will be secure. So this is not like I have a file saved on a hard drive and I have a file saved on my computer, because usually those things are probably in the same place. But like if you have a couple copies in the cloud and you make sure that those cloud servers are not like both in California, so that like if there's a wildfire, they're both destroyed, then that would be, you know, kind of getting towards things that you can do to do your own digital preservation. I think another important thing to note is that people use the word archive like in casual conversation in a way that is not how a professional archivist would use it. So like people talk about, you know, having like an archive of photos on their Instagram or something like that. That's not actually archiving anything, because you are putting your material in like something that is owned by someone else. So if you think that like, oh yeah, I've got all of my stuff on Instagram, I've got it all on Facebook, I've got it all on YouTube, so in 20 years I'll be able to go back and look at all those photos. Absolutely not. Like, those companies don't owe you anything. That stuff can disappear really, really quickly. And I think a good example of this is Vine. Like, private companies cannot be your only backup for your material because they do not care about you.
This is also applicable to like Google. Like, let's talk like Google Drive and shit like that. Not even the fun ones.
What's funny about Vine is that like now the backup of Vine is YouTube video compilations, which is still essentially letting a private company be the backup. And speaking of YouTube, a company owned by Google, Isabel.
Wait, what?
Oh, I was just segueing.
I didn't have anything else to say about that. I was just gonna say that like,
Oh.
like we mentioned a lot of fun social media companies, or like quote unquote fun. Let's be real, social media is a hellscape. Get off of it, I say, while having Twitter open. Anyway, like even the companies that are like Dropbox or like Google Drive or something like that, or something that's explicitly for like file sharing and stuff like that, you know, just pull your stuff, or like at least like have a copy of it somewhere. I'm really bad about doing this, by the way. I keep losing shit constantly, but you listeners should be better than me.
Speaking of Twitter, I just want to put it out there that I have not been on... It's Sunday right now. I have not been on Twitter since Wednesday. Please clap.
We're so proud of you. Has this actually been good for your life?
Yes.
Good.
Like, I keep noticing that I find myself reaching to tweet something stupid, and by that I mean the Model UN to TTRPG pipeline. Or I keep reaching to, like, look at tweets. But I don't need to do that.
Like, damn, so true.
Yeah, glad that you have recognized this.
Unfortunately, I also deleted Slack from my phone, and that will have to go back on my phone on Tuesday.
Tragic.
Yes, I also wanted to talk about fandom preservation and the history of stuff like LiveJournal getting taken over by Russia or whatever. Or, like, I think we see a lot of examples of sort of, like, amateur internet community archiving, which is really interesting to me, whether it's, like, people from Stripper Web, which we talked about last episode, where people are, like, speed learning Python, or, like, finding people that can help them run scripts to save a website before it's being obliterated by some, like, random guy who decided he's shutting down the website and won't take $12,000 from somebody to keep it running. Like, there's stuff like that, or, I don't know, I think even, like, so, oh man, Isabel, you're gonna be so happy when I say this sentence in a second.
I'm ready for it.
The MCR archive. Like,
okay.
There's such a, like, vibrant archive of what are the set lists of every single show My Chemical Romance has played. And, like, there are people that, for fun, they go and they make the MC archive. It's a thing on the internet, the MC archive.
I love that it's called the MC archive. That's really good.
Totally. If the acronym for your favorite internet thing ends in R, then just call it that archive. Yeah, so I don't know, like, how do you see those sorts of archival initiatives in relation to, like, people preserving folk histories and oral histories, like, thousands of years ago?
I mean, I think it's all interconnected, and that kind of digital community preservation, to me, is tied with community archives, which are generally defined as, like, archives that are outside of the traditional archival structures. So the way that we think about archives now, they were really created to organize government records and business records. But, like, governments and businesses are not the only communities that exist, right?
My favorite community is business.
And when I say business, I really mean institutional records. So, like, I work for a higher education institution. That would be an institutional archive. But with, like, people who are in power collecting records, like, the things that they prioritize are never going to be, like, a picture of the whole of the human experience, which is what a lot of people would really like an archive to be. And there's always going to be gaps and silences in those stories. And so community archives are, you know, usually an informal group of people who say, hey, our history is important and we want to make sure that it is preserved. And the MC archive is a version of that.
Incredible. Yeah, and then I'm also thinking about, like, in our own personal archives, how do we decide what is worth archiving and what we prefer to have preserved simply as memory? And I'm thinking about this in the context of, like, so grief hours. Last year, a friend of mine died, and then shortly after, I wrote about this app that I just thought it was interesting given what I was going through personally, but it's, like, a digital app where people can collaborate and, like, share voice memos and share photos and share, like, recipes or whatever, and just, like, collectively use this app to remember a person, which, as you said, there is a kind of archival issue there with what if the app just dies and then you don't have your stuff. But then I'm kind of thinking, like, with this friend, there are certain stories that we tell that are, like, the joy of this storytelling is when you tell it together in community and everybody kind of remembers a separate little detail, or, like, maybe something has kind of gotten exaggerated over time. And I think that, like, we kind of see oral storytelling sometimes as, like, an antithesis to physical archives. But I also think there's something nice about, like, I prefer sitting and telling a story about my friend with our other friends than if we had a voice memo of us telling the story. At the same time, I worry, like, am I going to forget things over time? But I also wonder if there is a natural way to forget. And if trying to archive all of our personal experiences is maybe, like, not always the move, or is this just me making a really emotional argument for the sake of I'm too lazy to, like, journal?
I mean, I think it really depends when you're thinking about what you want to save in perpetuity, whatever that means. So some of it is like, do you need this for legal or fiscal reasons? So, like, do you need your tax records? Probably. Do you need your immigration paperwork? Probably. So those things you should save. But when you're thinking about, like, is this something that is personally important to you? That is, I mean, really up to an individual's choice, right? And that could be like, well, I want to remember my friend, and so I'm going to make sure that I'm saving these photos and, like, this video of them and these, like, cards that they wrote in. But, you know, maybe that and your memories are enough.
I don't know. I think you guys should both read The Truth of Fact, The Truth of Feeling by Ted Chiang, which is a short story that was published in 2013, because it encapsulates this question of whether recording is a good thing from an emotional standpoint and also from a, like, relationship standpoint. I also feel like this got, like, mad, like I feel like we started very technical and then this got into, but what should we remember? And that's, like, I feel like that's not a question that we as a podcast are equipped to answer. Not because we're not smart, but because nobody's really equipped to answer that question.
Also, just to, like, fill out the bingo card, which someone did make a bingo card that I don't think we've tweeted out yet, but we gotta. So when I was in Laos, like...
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew that's what it was gonna be.
Yeah. So, like, I was part of a fellowship program that had a pretty, like, intensive orientation. And in those orientation meetings, there was one person who was like, you guys really should be journaling, like, your experiences. And I didn't journal, but I took a lot of pictures. And I think part of why I didn't journal was because I just didn't have the emotional bandwidth. Like, it just, like, journaling is really, like, taxing, and I feel like we don't talk about this. But, like, I can look at a picture and be like, oh yeah, I remember when I went to that weird department store and I saw that funny shirt that said Jew fat, in the sense of, like, when people put letters of languages they don't speak on shirts, like how Americans appropriate, like, Asian characters, and then seeing that in reverse in Asian countries is very funny. And I was like, oh yeah, Jew fat, I should buy the Jew fat shirt, like, it's my identity. But I did not. But then I look back and I'm like, damn, I remember that, but I didn't journal about it. But I don't know, like, the act of archiving is a really conscious, taxing thing to do, and it's interesting to think about that in our own personal archives.
No, but I feel like this is a different thing, right? Like, because there's one see, like, now I feel like it's like us talking about what Allison's job is without us actually knowing how any of this fucking works. But, like, but I do feel like there's a very big difference between what do I want to preserve for my own personal life and for my personal community, and what do I want to preserve because, oh shit, we should keep this as a society. These are two very different questions, and sometimes, I mean, on the other hand, it's like, yeah, the personal is political, and anything that's in people's personal lives will be of some sort of interest in the future, theoretically. On the other hand, I think just, like, the mental state you go into for these things, like, one of this is a job, one of this is your life, you know? Also, my hot take is that journaling is mid, and I don't do it. I simply forget things like a cool person.
I mean, as an archivist, when you have someone's journal from, like, 100 years ago, it's super interesting. But also, like, I think there's an important distinction to make that Isabel was kind of getting at, which is, as an archivist, I'm not creating records. I'm just taking care of other people's records. So it's very different from doing your own, like, personal archiving. The definition of an archive, generally speaking, although, like, this is complicated and doesn't really work, but traditionally the definition has been that an archive is a collection of records that were created over, like, the ordinary course of business. So created by people who weren't necessarily thinking that this thing would, like, live on past them and be a record for future generations to analyze and look at and read, just like someone was, writing in their diary, or someone was writing letters home to their parents from World War One, or someone was writing nasty comments on Twitter. Like, all of those things are just things that people were doing as they were living, and it is the act of preserving them that is the archiving part of it.
Sometimes someone sells some really shitty copper,
and then no one will ever forget about it.
Amanda, do you know what we're talking about?
I don't.
Okay, for the benefit of the class. Okay, so in ye olden days, when they used clay tablets, like the olden days, there's a copper merchant named Ian Nasser, who I may be pronouncing his name wrong, who simply saved all of the clay tablets of people complaining about his bad copper in his house. And because he saved all his receipts, we now know that everyone was like, bitch, your copper sucks. Now, it's kind of insane that he saved all of his receipts. Like, these were like all together. He was clearly like invested in everyone complaining about him. And because of that, we know his name and that he was selling bad copper. And people were mad at him about it. And there is one of the clay tablets in the Penn Museum.
Oh, hell yeah.
So that's the explanation for you and Craig.
So when you're looking at things like somebody's diary from 200 years ago, or like letters from World War One, is there any sort of like ethical code among archivists of like, when is it okay to read people's diaries? Or is it just sort of like, at this point, we're treating it as a historical document and these people are dead, it doesn't matter if we read their diary?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. So like, fortunately where I work, all of the diaries that we have were donated by the people who wrote those diaries. So any restrictions around like, don't like allow the public access to like this particular portion of the diary, like we know that the donor was okay with everything else being read. But there are certainly cases where like somebody will reach out to me and say, hey, I found like this thing that was written by someone who like attended your institution. Do you want it? And at that point I have to sit down and go, do I want somebody's like love letters that someone just found at a garage sale or something like that, when that person themselves never consented to those things being shared? And sometimes the answer is no, we're okay, we don't want that. And sometimes the answer is, yeah, actually, we will take it and we'll at least look at it and then make a decision based on the content of that thing. Generally speaking, if somebody is alive, or if I have a way of getting in touch with their like direct descendants, if they are around, and I get something that is related to that person, then I will reach out to the family and say, hey, I have this thing. Do you want this thing? If you don't want this thing, are you okay with it being part of the archive here? But it really depends. It depends on like the individual archivist who is working with collections.
Damn, can't believe there's nuance in archiving.
There is nuance in all things.
Except internet comments. Except Twitter. That's the punchline. It is interesting to think about how things like Elon Musk deciding to gate access to Twitter's API, which previously was very open, will impact things like archiving, because I know, like, in the book Because Internet by Gretchen McCulloch, which is about internet linguistics, I was really surprised at how often Twitter is used as a way of analyzing internet linguistic data, because since there was a very public API, it was very easy to like scrape information and run research using that data, but now you have to pay a lot of money to do that. And
so we reach another bingo square in the WoW True bingo card where we talk about overthrowing capitalism.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, capitalism being bad. We're killing it, guys. We're gonna get fucking bingo on this.
Another bingo element, NFTs.
NFTs, yes, let's just get that whole fucking card filled out.
Let's talk about crypto being silly.
You know, it's actually been a while since we've talked about crypto because I think the crypto boom has become the crypto bust, as if you've been following the news for like the last year is probably apparent to you. But the reason we're talking about it today is that we have an update on the Metabirkins thing, which we talked about in episode 41, where Allison was also guesting.
Yay!
And there's been an update there. So, first of all, if you don't know what we're talking about, go listen to episode 41. I'm not going to explain it to you again. Just kidding. I will explain it to you. However...
And it is archived by the private company Spotify.
What we're talking about here is the outcome of the trial, and what we talked about in episode 41 is like, hey, this trial might be happening. But basically, so, you know Birkins, right? And Birkins are expensive handbags that you need to go through a whole series of hoops to purchase one. It's like a whole situation. Getting a Birkin means that you have to befriend a Hermes sales associate. I think I pronounced that wrong. That's fine. And then through a series of like social interactions, they will eventually offer you a Birkin. This is like a whole thing in the luxury goods industry.
Yeah, I didn't know about this until our episode. I didn't know what a Birkin was until we recorded that. And that was also the episode when we talked about Telfar bags. And then I was like, you know what? I should get a Telfar. And now I love my medium azalea Telfar.
Oh my god. Well, I'm just glad that you don't have a Birkin, because I think that's a waste of money.
I do not have the money for a Birkin. I do have the money for a medium Telfar.
But you might have had the money for a Metabirkin, which was a NFT that was essentially just of a Birkin, like just an image of a Birkin. And like basically Mason Rothschild made a bunch of NFTs that just had Birkins on it. I don't know how else to describe this. Like, Allison, how would you like... It's a Birkin NFT. Like, what else is it?
Yeah, I mean, it was literally just, they were literally just images of Birkins digitally rendered that were individual in that he, like, made some of them, or I think all of the Metabirkins were made to look like they had faux fur on them, and then he would make some of them one color, some of them had like stripes, some of them had like the Mona Lisa made out of faux fur on the front of it. They were just like ugly pictures.
Yeah, so it was simply Birkins, pictures, NFTs. We've talked about how NFTs suck. We don't need to like rehash that. But basically what happened here is Hermes was like, yo, you can't do that. Hey, stop. We are going to lawsuit you. And the reason this is this is exactly what they said. I read it all. No, that's not what they said.
Is that what you say at work? I'm gonna lawsuit you.
Yeah, I say that every day at work. And basically, the interesting thing about this is that this is the first ever trial that's kind of come to conclusion, examining the NFT/intellectual property like mixture wrapping up. Couple of notes here. So basically, the outcome of this trial is that the 9-person jury returned a verdict last Wednesday. It's going to be 2 Wednesdays from now, I think, when this comes out, awarding Hermes $133,000 in total damages, and they found basically that Rothschild's NFTs were not protected speech under the First Amendment, and that these were really more of, how do I want to put this? Like, basically, they're the consumer products more than they are art, because a lot of this lawsuit was kind of about like, okay, is this something that falls into like a protected free speech thing? Is it something that is a piece of art and therefore it's like not like competing in the same realm as a Birkin is? And is it infringing? This all gets into like technical trademark stuff, but basically they were like, yeah, dude, this is like the same shit. No.
Damn. Imagine you spend $20,000 on this supposedly, like, very beautifully made, rare bag, and then in court, a jury is like, nah, that's a consumer good, it's not art.
Well, I mean, no, let's not get it twisted. They're not talking about the Birkins being consumer goods. They're talking about the NFTs being...
The Metabirkins.
The Metabirkin is a consumer good.
Hey, Allison, I have another joke for you. What would you call the metadata of the Metabirkin?
I mean, do I tell you what your punchline is, or do you want me to say, I don't know, what?
Yeah, it's too late.
Do you have a punchline? Because my punchline is just Metabirkin metadata, and that's not really
I thought
good.
you were going to say, like, Metabirkin data.
Metabirkin
Oh, that's
data.
better. See? Damn. Where would we be without Allison in our lives?
It's like man door, like hook car door. Whatever.
See, I feel like a good episode title would be Metabirkin data, but that would be very bad for SEO and discoverability.
Yeah, so you know the meta of the Metabirkin data title of this episode.
Yeah, SEO is the meta data.
Neither of these words mean anything to me anymore. But yeah, so basically this was of interest to people because the outcome of this trial kind of maybe determines the outcome of other trials in this scenario, or like it's giving some guidance, because the way that the common law works is usually at 1,000 million foot level. It's like, yeah, this is the way that it's been done in the past. I guess this is the way it works in the future. The law is a hellscape, guys. It's not great out there.
This is not legal advice.
This is not legal advice. There, another bingo square.
Just kill them. Yeah.
But basically here, it's what I thought was kind of interesting is that this is a jury trial deciding this, and juries basically decide questions of fact rather than questions of law. So they were kind of like factually, this is how this is working. This doesn't actually mean anything to anyone but lawyers, and lawyers are going to listen to this being like, Isabel, you're making this so simplified that it doesn't mean anything, which is true.
Do other lawyers listen to our podcast that aren't
I have
your
no
friends?
idea. How would I know this?
If you're a lawyer and you are in a parasocial relationship with Isabel, tweet us.
Amanda, how am I supposed to know what percentage of our audience is lawyers? Why would I know that?
Because lawyer telepathy, the lawyer
Right, yeah, they
sense.
give that to you when they give you your JD.
Yeah, it's like how, speaking on behalf of all Jewish people, it's like when we go to our meetings and they give you your space lasers.
Right. Exactly comparable, and these are both definitely real.
Yes.
The only other thing I have to say about Metabirkins, backstory to this, a bunch of news articles obviously writing about this. I thought this was extremely funny in the New York Times. And it is basically, so Ian Rogers, the former chief digital officer of the fashion conglomerate LVMH, which, Louis Vuitton, who currently works at a crypto company named Ledger. Sidebar, what sort of goddamn, route has this man taken in his career? Said the company's preoccupation with Rothschild was puzzling. Rothschild being the guy who made the Metabirkins. And to quote, maybe this hit close to home. Luxury people should understand NFTs, because if you have been in the business of explaining why someone would spend $18,000 on a bag, then you are pretty well suited at explaining why someone would pay $3,000 for an NFT.
Booyah!
Which, damn, roast everybody involved.
Allison, as someone who was very interested in this Metabirkin saga, how do you feel about this seeming conclusion, or is it a conclusion?
It's a conclusion because I think he's pretty decisively lost this case. I don't know. This is a case where it's not like I feel like, oh no, Hermes, the brand that sells multi-$1,000 handbags and is incredibly exclusive, their brand is being damaged. How dare this artist? But also just the fact that the artist was so upset, sidebar, about people minting fake Metabirkins just is very funny to me. This whole thing is so ridiculous. NFTs are terrible, and also the prices that luxury companies charge for things, also terrible, even though, as Isabel said, I do like handbags. It's so over the top and ridiculous that it's just it's like, I don't know, just watching crabs in a bucket pull each other down.
Damn.
I don't think crabs is on the bingo card, but it should be. Isabel, I have a legal question, which, not asking for legal advice, of course, but so I know, we talked about how, law is very based on precedent, and this could set a precedent, but, how quickly does precedent get set? Could someone have a similar trial and be well, actually, NFTs are protected by the First Amendment, and that's exactly what the Founding Fathers were talking about. They were one day, there will be fake money that is more fake than our current fake money, and on the technological blocks that make up this fake money, you can make a fake image
I mean,
R.I.P. George Washington, you would have loved NFTs.
and that's
Also,
the pull
R.I.P. George Washington, you would have loved Wow If True. That is a really niche meme for, like, a few people that might have thought one of our tweets was funny, in which I posted a picture in a Wow If True shirt posing outside of a house that George Washington once lived in that I just happened to experience while walking through Redacted.
Amanda, you know what the funniest thing is when you explain a tweet.
Damn. This is what happens when you haven't been on Twitter in a couple days.
See, now you're like, you know, without that hit of actual Twitter, now you are simply explaining the tweets on the podcast. Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop being
so
mean.
the joke is, you often order shrimp fried rice, but you could also read the phrase as a shrimp frying the rice, and that's the joke.
Okay, to answer your question, I'll actually give the serious legal answer, which is basically that precedent... I do not actually know how quickly precedent becomes, like, law, and basically the higher up the court, the more that a court can overrule precedent, if that makes sense. So this is why the Supreme Court can be like, yo, Roe versus Wade, we're not doing that anymore. And the way that they usually do that is they look back at previous stuff and then they reinterpret things, and then everyone else has to be like, damn, I guess this is how it works. But this also kind of has a soft effect of making them seem less legitimate. There's kind of like an unspoken... This is sort of what I've parsed, and I'm not actually a litigator, so I'm not actually close to any of this stuff. But basically, the court derives legitimacy from precedent and basically in having consistent opinions over time. So unless there's a good reason, precedent doesn't get overruled. And by good reason, I mean sometimes the good reason is just the judge is like, actually, that's not how that works. So, to answer your question, like I said earlier, law is a hellscape. It's totally possible that in the near future, a different court will be like, actually, this is not how the NFT trademark thing works. Like, this was like a federal New York court, so like that specific district. I'm not going to get into this because I actually don't remember most of how like civil procedure works because it's been a couple years and how jurisdictional rules work. But in short, it depends.
Wow. Nuance. All right. To completely pivot, I'm looking at our shared Google document. You have written Low Howl's Moving Castle, and then it says, A, why does it look like that? B, Amanda, do not look this up. This is a surprise.
Yes, so
caps.
This is actually related to our previous luxury handbag discussion, and I think we've really gone... Yes, I think we've really gone on like an arc in this episode from going from the purely digital to the perhaps too real. Because the context here is that
Loewe.
Oh, wait, I have to hit another bingo point. Is that this is the thesis of the podcast. Is that the very digital is very real.
Oh my god. Anyway, Allison, would you like to explain this to me? Because to us, I guess.
Sure. So luxury brand Loewe has done 3 collaborations now with Studio Ghibli. And this is their final collaboration. They've done, their first one was Totoro, the second one was Spirited Away, and the last one is Howl's Moving Castle. And as part of this, they design a like capsule collection that has clothing and handbags and accessories that are inspired by those films. And for the most part, the content that has come out of this has been incredibly cute. But sometimes they're not. And Amanda, I am going to share with you a picture of a Howl's Moving Castle handbag. And then I would like...
I just looked
Oh,
it up and
no.
I'm having so much fun.
It's just... could you please describe what you're looking at?
It's a little guy. It looks like a rejected Pokemon design. It's all like brown leather. It kind of looks like there's some things that are supposed to be like steel, but they're not. Also, so this is like very prominently displayed on the website, and also on the website they have a cursor where black feathers follow your cursor around. It's giving MySpace, and I love it. But on the website, this handbag is sitting in a yellow chair, like very prominently displayed like on the front page. And I don't know, I mean, this bag looks like it could carry a lot. There's some good, like, side pockets. Doesn't have a water bottle holder, which I think
You're concentrating on the practical aspects of this bag? Amanda, it looks like that.
It has teeth.
It has teeth?
It has teeth, it has eyes.
It has eyes.
Amanda, how big do you think this bag is? And how much do you think it costs?
Maybe, like... I'm gonna say it costs $20,000, and I'm gonna say... I mean, oh, actually, no, that because of Birkin's, like, $20,000. I'm gonna say it costs, like, $5,000, and I'm gonna say that, like, the body of it, so, like, not counting the legs, I'm gonna say is, like, a foot.
Amanda, I'm going to share another photo with you. It is a photo of this bag being held by a human man.
It's so big.
I think I was right. That's, like, about a foot.
That is bigger than a foot.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Also, love how this man in the photo, again, I'm focusing on the wrong things. This man is wearing, like, sneakers, jorts, and a pea coat with nothing under it. And
That's Howell himself.
What weather
That's
are
Howell
you dressing
himself.
for? What?
I'm also, Amanda, gonna share the price with you because your first guess was closer than your second guess. It is
Oh, no.
$15,850 handbag.
Also, I would like to just point out that the guy carrying the bag is holding it like he's caught a fish. Like this bag is like a fish that he has caught, like some sort of beast. Because that's what this is. It's some sort of beast.
Yeah.
Everyone should go look this up
it's
right
like
now.
an Animal Crossing.
If you haven't looked this up, you should go look it up. Cannot stress enough, our descriptions are not doing this justice.
Damn, who buys these things?
People?
There's a $280 candle.
Okay, that candle is
I wonder what
more
it smells
expensive than I would have expected it to be, even for Loewe. People who like Hell's Moving Castle and people who like luxury goods.
So the candle scent, which I just wanted to know, the scent of this $280 candle, it's called Calcifer, and it features the film's fire demon, Calcifer, and the candle has a smoky scent with notes of incense, immortelle, what's that? Patchouli, vetiver, roasted hazelnut, cardamom, and elemi.
Yeah, sounds like a candle.
Yeah. Damn. I don't know. I just really wanted to know what it tasted like.
Tasted?
Tasted?
Yeah, it's... Oh, sorry. Yeah, I eat candles. The Calcifer stuff is really inspired, I have to say.
The Calcifer stuff is very cute. Again, I really like luxury goods, so I'm like, oh, I would totally buy this. On the other hand, not for $3,000.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about luxury goods, is that sometimes you're like, damn, these people, they really know how to do a fashion, but then you're also like, I do not want to buy a cotton t-shirt for $490, which is one of the things on this website. You know what t-shirts are made of cotton, I believe, and not $490?
Which t-shirts?
The t-shirts available at wowiftrue.com/merch.
And on that note, turn the digital into the physical and go buy our fucking merch. So, if you like this episode, tell a friend. Word of mouth is how we grow. Thank you to all of our patrons, and shout out specifically to Zoe Bray, Andre Thea, Brian Gabriel, Lotta, Max, and Aaron's husband. We know your name now. Your name is not changing from Aaron's husband here. If you want your name in the above or in our Twitter header, slide right into our Patreon at patreon.com/wowoftrue. Shout out to audio editors Allison Mills and David Newtown. And thank you again to Allison for being on the show.
Yay.
Where can we find you? I should have said that earlier.
You can find me online at AllisonMillsWrites.com.
And also thank you to graphic designer and Canva warlock Eric Silver, who made our logo, Sam Rizer, who made our podcast music, and Tessa Farrow, who is transcribing our episodes. You can find us on Twitter as @WowofTruePod and Instagram and Facebook as @WowofTrue. Had your 15 seconds of internet fame? Slide right into our Twitter DMs and tell us about it. And until next time, let's get weird on the internet.